President,
The Republican leader.
I ask that further proceedings on the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Tonight, the President of the United States will come to the Capitol to give us his sense of the State of the Union. This is a venerable tradition, and we welcome him. And yet it's hard not to feel a sense of disappointment even before tonight's speech is delivered. Because while we don't yet know all the specifics, we do know the goal. Based on what the President's aides have been telling reporters, the goal isn't to conquer the nation's problems, it's to conquer Republicans. The goal isn't to prevent gridlock, but to guarantee it. Here's how the New York Times summed up the President's election year strategy in a recent article entitled, "Obama to Turn Up Attacks on Congress in Campaign." Here's the quote. In terms of the President's relationship with Congress in 2012, the President is no longer tied to Washington, D.C. According to the story, winning a full-year extension of the cut in payroll taxes is the last must-do piece of legislation for the White House. And here's how a White House aide described the President's election year strategy just a couple of weeks ago, presumably just as tonight's speech was being drafted. Referring to past displays of bipartisanship, he said, quote, "Then we were in a position of legislative compromise by necessity. That phase is behind us." So as I see it, the message from the White House is that the President's basically given up. He got nearly everything he wanted from Congress for the first 2 years of his presidency. The results are in. It's not good. So he's decided to spend the rest of the year trying to convince folks that the results of the economic policies he put in place are somehow Congress's fault and not his. Well, my message is this. This debate isn't about what Congress may or may not do in the future. It's about what this President has already done. The President's policies are now firmly in place. It's his economy now. We're living under the Obama economy. The President may want to come here tonight and make it sound as if he just somehow walked in the door. A better approach is to admit that his 3-year experiment in big government has made our economy worse and our nation's future more uncertain. And it's time for a different approach. That's the message the American people delivered to the President in November of 2010, and they're still waiting. The President will tell the American people tonight that he's got a blueprint for the economy. What he will fail to mention is that we've been working off the President's blueprint now for 3 years. For 3 years. And what's it gotten us? Millions still looking for work, trillions in debt, and the first credit downgrade in U.S. history. Now, the President will propose ideas tonight that sound good and have bipartisan support. And if he's serious about these proposals, if he really wants to enact them, he'll encourage Democrats who run the Senate to keep them free from poison pills like tax hikes on job creators that we know from past experience turn bipartisan support into bipartisan opposition. If the President wants someone to blame for this economy, he should start with himself. The fact is, any CEO in America with a record like this, after 3 years on the job, would be graciously shown the door. This President blames the managers instead. He blames the folks on the shop floor. He blames the weather. Well, you've certainly within your rights to walk away from the legislative process if you like, Mr. President. You can point the finger all you like, but you can't walk away from your record. I saw a survey the other day that contained a number of sobering findings. It was a poll of small business leaders. It said that more than 8 out of 10 of them now believe the U.S. economy is on the wrong track. 8 in 10 said they'd rather have Washington stay out of the way than try to help them. nearly 9 out of 10 said they'd rather have more certainty from Washington than more assistance. And it said that nearly a third of all those surveyed said they're not hiring on account of the health care bill. A third of them said they were not hiring on account of the health care bill. What this survey says to me is that the policies of this administration are literally crushing the private sector. They're stifling job creation, and they're holding the economy back. Americans want Washington to get out of the way, and yet this president continues to have the same two-word answer he's always had for seemingly every single problem we face: more government. And this is the economy we've got to show for it. Last week, the president had an opportunity to do something on his own about the ongoing jobs crisis. The only thing that stood in the way of the single biggest shovel-ready infrastructure project in America was him. The Keystone Pipeline was just the kind of project he has been calling for in speeches for months. And he said no. That one could wait. Here's a project he knew would create thousands of jobs instantly. He said no. A project that wouldn't have cost taxpayers a dime. He said no. That would have brought more energy from our ally Canada and less from the Middle East. He said no. It all came down to one question: was the Keystone Pipeline in the national interest or not? He said no. As one columnist put it, his own standard wasn't the national interest, it was his own political interest. Americans want jobs, and the president is studying an election that took place 60 years ago to see how he can save his own job. He sided with the liberal environmental base over the energy and security interests of the American people. And that's exactly what we're now being told we can expect for the rest of the year. In last year's State of the Union, the president talked about how we need to win the future. Win the future. This year, he just wants to win the next campaign. The president can decide he's not interested in working with Congress if his party only controls one half of it. That's his prerogative. He can give up on bipartisanship, but we won't. Our problems are too urgent. The economy is too weak. The future is too uncertain. The president knows as well as I do that when he's called for action on things for which there exists bipartisan support, Republicans have been his strongest allies. Last year in the State of the Union, he called for free trade agreements. We worked hard to get them done, and we did. Since then, he called for an extension of the highway and FAA bills and the jobs that come with them. We did both with strong bipartisan support. The president asked for patent reform. We got that done too. The president knows as well as we do we're happy to work with him whenever he's willing to work with us. If he turns his back on that good faith offer, as we expect he will this year, we'll remind people that the problems we face aren't about what Congress may or may not do in the future, but what this president has already done, what's already happened. Let the president turn his back on bipartisanship. Let the press cover every futile speech and every staged event. But we intend to do our jobs, and we invite him to join us.